The Pittsburgh Steelers have made one of the most consequential coaching decisions in modern franchise history, and the reaction has been swift, loud, and deeply divided. In the wake of Mike Tomlin stepping down, the organization has named Mike McCarthy as its next head coach. On paper, the move checks familiar boxes: experience, Super Bowl pedigree, years spent leading high profile organizations. But the immediate response tells a different story. Instead of optimism, the hire has sparked confusion, skepticism, and outright frustration among much of the Steelers' fan base. For a franchise that defines itself by stability and long term vision, this decision feels, to many, uncharacteristically rushed. Mike McCarthy becomes just the fourth head coach in Pittsburgh since 1969. That fact alone underscores how rare coaching changes are for the Steelers. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, each era lasted more than a decade. Each coach became inseparable from the identity of the franchise. That history matters. When the Steelers make a coaching hire, it is typically with the expectation of 10 years, not two or three. Longevity is not a bonus in Pittsburgh, it is the standard. That's why this decision has drawn such scrutiny. At 62 years old, McCarthy arrives at a stage of his career that raises legitimate questions about timeline. This is not a hire that suggests a long runway of growth and evolution. It suggests experience brought in to stabilize, not to build across generations. For some, that's the point. For others, it's the problem. McCarthy's resume is substantial. He won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. He coached elite quarterbacks. He has decades of NFL experience. Those facts are not in dispute, but recent years have complicated his reputation. His tenure with the Dallas Cowboys produced regular season success, but repeated postseason disappointment, high expectations followed by familiar endings, losses in games where preparation, adaptability, and in game adjustments were questioned heavily. Those patterns are difficult to ignore. Steelers fans, accustomed to disciplined teams that punch above their weight in January, see a contrast between the franchise's self image and McCarthy's recent track record. That contrast fuels the backlash. The timing also matters. Mike Tomlin's departure created an opening that many believed would lead to a generational pivot, a chance to modernize, a chance to identify the next long term steward of the franchise. Instead, the hire feels to critics like a conservative stopgap, a move that prioritizes familiarity over forward momentum. That perception may not be entirely fair, but it is powerful. Pittsburgh is not a franchise that typically chases league trends, but it is also not a franchise that ignores them. Over the last decade, successful teams have increasingly leaned into adaptability, innovation, and schematic flexibility. The question now being asked is whether McCarthy represents that evolution or a retreat to comfort. The organization clearly believes the answer is leadership. From ownership's perspective, bringing in a coach who has navigated media pressure, locker room dynamics, and high stakes expectations may feel like the safest possible response to Tomlin's exit. Stability has always been the Steelers' currency, and McCarthy offers predictability. But predictability cuts both ways. A hire like this lowers volatility, but it also lowers ceiling in the eyes of many fans. The concern isn't that McCarthy will fail immediately, it's that the hire caps ambition, that it signals a desire to remain competitive rather than transformative. That distinction matters in today's NFL. The AFC is loaded with young quarterbacks, aggressive play callers, and teams unafraid to reinvent themselves. In that environment, continuity alone is no longer enough. It must be paired with adaptability, and that's where the skepticism centers. The Steelers front office has emphasized culture fit, accountability, and professionalism. Those traits align with McCarthy's reputation, but the fan base is asking a different question. What does the next version of Steelers football look like? Right now, that picture is unclear. The age factor adds to the unease. At 62, McCarthy is not likely to be a decade long solution. Even if successful, this hire almost guarantees another coaching transition sooner rather than later. For a franchise that prides itself on avoiding turnover, that reality feels contradictory. The backlash, then, isn't purely emotional, it's structural. Fans aren't rejecting McCarthy as a person or coach in isolation. They're reacting to what the hire represents: a shift from long term planning to short term stabilization, from continuity across generations to continuity across seasons. Whether that perception proves accurate will depend on what happens next. Staffing decisions will matter enormously: coordinators, position coaches, philosophical direction. If McCarthy surrounds himself with innovative voices and modern systems, the narrative could shift quickly. If the staff mirrors past approaches, the skepticism will harden. Roster evaluation will also be critical. The Steelers are not devoid of talent, but they are also not one move away. Development, particularly on offense, will define McCarthy's tenure. His ability to adapt scheme to personnel rather than force personnel into scheme will be watched closely. This hire does not exist in a vacuum. It follows one of the most stable coaching tenures in NFL history. Any successor was going to face comparison. Replacing Mike Tomlin was never going to be easy. Replacing him with someone seen as a short term answer only intensifies that challenge. The Steelers have chosen experience. They have chosen familiarity. They have chosen control. Whether they have chosen the right future remains an open question. For now, the backlash reflects uncertainty rather than rejection. Fans are not rooting against Mike McCarthy, they are questioning the vision. They want to understand how this hire fits the Steelers' identity, not just their resume checklist. In Pittsburgh, patience exists, but it is not unconditional. Mike McCarthy now steps into one of the most tradition heavy jobs in professional sports, tasked not only with winning games, but with convincing a skeptical fan base that this move aligns with who the Steelers believe they are. The confusion surrounding the hire is real. The disapproval is loud, and the margin for error is slim. This is not a rebuilding franchise, it is a legacy franchise. And how this decision unfolds will determine whether this moment is remembered as a necessary bridge or a rare misstep in a history defined by trust in the long game.